She just wanted to help a lost little girl, but she had no idea who the father watching everything was. Before the story begins, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd really love to know how far these stories are reaching. And if you enjoy heartfelt love stories, subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any new videos, and you'll help this channel grow and keep sharing truly moving stories. The smell of old coffee still clung to Claire's apron as she wearily crossed the arrivals area of Denver Airport. It was late afternoon, and the mix of hurried voices, loudspeaker announcements, and rolling suitcases created a constant noise that made her head throb. She had just finished a 12-hour shift at the small cafe in Terminal B, her feet aching. Inside worn-out sneakers and her reddish-brown hair tied up in a messy bun. Still, she kept checking her phone, reading her mom's message asking for blood pressure meds and the bills due at the end of the week. That's when she noticed. Little girl, couldn't have been more than 6, was standing near one of the columns, her very light eyes wide and her bottom lip trembling. She wore a white dress with blue polka dots, shiny patent shoes, and a pink backpack hanging off one shoulder. She looked around frantically, unable to lock eyes with anyone. Claire felt something stir in her chest, an instinct, a calling. She forgot her own problems and calmly walked over to the girl. Kneeling down, she brought herself to the same height. "Hey, are you lost, sweetie?" Her voice came out gently, almost a whisper. The girl hesitated, and silent tears began to stream down her cheeks. Too scared to speak, Claire held out her hand gently. "It's okay. I'm here now. No one's going to hurt you. What's your name?" Lily. The girl finally said, her voice choked. Claire smiled, her hand still extended. "Lily. Such a beautiful name. My name is Claire. Do you want to hold my hand for a little bit while we find your dad or someone from security?" Lily didn't answer, but she clutched Claire's hand tightly. Her little fingers were ice cold. What Claire didn't know was that, just a few meters away, a man was watching everything closely. Tall, wearing a flawless dark suit, his grayish-green eyes sharp and alert. His broad shoulders were tense, his right hand clenched in a fist. This was J.T. Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Tech Group and Lily's father. He had turned away for just a moment to answer an urgent call from the board when his daughter disappeared. Those few minutes were enough to nearly give him a heart attack, and now there she was, with a stranger kneeling in front of her. He moved toward them quickly, almost impulsively. "Lily!" His firm voice echoed among the concrete columns. The girl immediately turned, releasing Claire's hand to run to him. J.T. picked her up, holding her tightly against his chest. His face buried in her hair, breathing in relief. Claire stood up, stepping back discreetly, as if she had intruded into a space that wasn't hers. Jay looked at her cautiously. His cold gaze swept over the slender woman standing in front of him. Worn sneakers, dark jeans, a beige t-shirt, a coffee-stained apron. She didn't seem to pose any threat. But she wasn't the kind of person he usually encountered, let alone trusted with his daughter. "You were with her?" he asked, with no softness. Claire nodded, a little uneasy. "She was scared, alone. I just tried to help." He studied her for a moment longer, then looked at Lily. "Did she hurt you?" The girl shook her head, clinging to his neck. "She was nice, Daddy. She called me sweetie." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Claire shoved her hands into her jeans pockets and looked at the floor. "Thank you," J.T. finally said. The words came out emotionless, like they had been forced through a filter. "You can go on with your life." Claire nodded slightly, but before turning away, she looked once more at the girl. She smiled tenderly. "Take good care of her." And then she walked away, not waiting for a response. She passed hurried people, distracted security guards, and indifferent faces. No one knew what had happened there. But for Lily, something had changed. And for JT, no matter how much he tried to deny it, it had he watched her walk away until she disappeared into the crowd. And for some reason he didn't understand, he kept looking, even after she was gone. The next day, the Denver sky woke up blanketed in low-hanging clouds, and the city seemed suspended in a gray mist. Traffic moved slowly but steadily, as if the world were on silent mode. Inside a discreetly parked black luxury SUV near the airport terminal, J.T. Whitmore watched the flow of people with a restlessness that didn't match his usual composure. He had no business there that morning. No meetings, no flights, but Lily. The little girl had woken up restless, asking again and again about the nice lady from the airport. J.T., who rarely gave in to childish whims, even surprised himself when he answered, "Maybe we'll swing by." He hadn't told his daughter they were going there because of her. Not even to himself. He kept repeating in his head that it was just curiosity, a sense of responsibility. He needed to know who that woman was, and why, after so many therapists and nannies, Lily had finally felt safe beside a stranger. Lily was sitting in the back seat, hugging the stuffed bunny she called Mr. Fluff. Her bright eyes scanned the airport like someone waiting to see a dream come true. "Do you think she'll be here, Daddy?" she asked, hope clear in her voice. "I don't know, Lily. She might be working somewhere else today." But he knew. He had a hunch. And his instinct was right. Across the arrivals area, Claire appeared wearing the same uniform as the day before. Beige apron over a white t-shirt, fitted jeans, and the same messy bun. She carried a tray with 2 coffees and a water bottle. She walked briskly, like someone who couldn't afford to waste time. But her watchful eyes still caught the dark SUV with its tinted windows, and the familiar little face pressed to the back window. Claire stopped, smiled, surprised, then hesitated. Would it be right to approach? She didn't want to seem intrusive, but the girl opened the car door before the driver could stop her and ran toward Claire with the bunny bouncing in her arms. "You came back," Lily exclaimed, hugging Claire around the waist. Claire immediately knelt down, hugging the girl naturally. "You too. Are you okay now, sweetie?" Lily nodded eagerly, holding the bunny close to her chest. The bond between the two, built in minutes the day before, seemed to have deep roots. JT stood watching, next to the car door. Navy blue suit, luxury watch on his wrist, unreadable expression. His eyes didn't leave Claire, though he held his. Posture rigid, like someone trying to protect something he couldn't quite name. "You definitely made an impression on her," he said calmly as he walked up. "Apparently, a good one." Claire stood up slowly. Even in front of such an imposing man, she didn't back down. She had nothing to hide. "I just did what anyone would do. Or what anyone should do." He nodded, unsure how to respond. It was rare for someone to speak to him like that. No flattery, no fear. "She spent the whole night talking about you," he said after a pause. "Kept saying your voice was calm. That you made her feel safe." Claire looked at Lily, who was now distracted trying to sip her coffee. Then looked back at JT. "That makes me happy. But it also worries me." "Why?" "Because she shouldn't feel so alone that she clings to a stranger." The words cut deeper than she expected. JT lowered his eyes for a moment. A tense silence settled between them. It wasn't an accusation, but it was the truth, and he knew it. He began but didn't finish. Lily, oblivious to the adult tension, tugged on Claire's apron. "Can you come with us today? Just for a bit?" Claire smiled, brushing the girl's fine hair. "I've got another shift today, Angel, but I can see you around here some other time." Lily pouted sadly. JT noticed, and for the first time, felt something new. guilt. Then he made a sudden decision. If I hired you to help with her, a few hours a day, would you accept? Claire looked at him with a hard-to-read expression. You're trying to hire someone who helped your daughter out of kindness? I'm trying to keep near her the only person who's made her truly smile in months. Claire hesitated. Her eyes moved from the father to the daughter. She knew she needed money. Her mother's tests were overdue. The gas bill past due. But she also knew accepting something like that could change everything, and not necessarily for the better. I don't give answers without thinking it through, she said gently but firmly. But thank you. She bent down one last time to hug Lily. I'm glad you're okay, little one. Then she walked away, leaving the scent of coffee and quiet dignity, and the AIRJT stood there, once again watching that woman disappear into the crowd. But now he knew it wasn't a coincidence, and he no longer wanted to pretend it was. Gazing at his own reflection in the car's tinted window, he murmured to himself, "Who are you, Claire Reynolds?" And deep down, he really wanted to find out. That same night, already home, Claire wore the old sweatshirt she saved for her most exhausting days. She sat at the kitchen table, sorting bills and scribbling her next week's shifts into her notebook, when her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Melanie, her coworker at the cafe, naturally nosy, and that night apparently holding something urgent. You won't believe who that little girl's father is. J.T. Whitmore. The J.T. Whitmore. Claire frowned, confused. She opened her browser and typed the name, expecting nothing. But when the first results appeared, it was like the blood drained from her face. There he was. On magazine covers, at gala events, in articles about tech and finance. CEO of one of the largest companies in the country. A billionaire. Widower since 2021. After a tragic car accident took his wife during a storm in Aspen. Reclusive ever since. Known for his coldness in business and his aversion to public appearances. Claire let the phone fall onto the table. She, Claire Reynolds, the waitress who shared a bedroom with her sister and helped her mother pay the bills by selling cupcakes on Sundays. Was she really about to step into someone's world like that? No. She jumped to her feet as if the floor had turned unstable beneath her. All of this was a mistake, a misunderstanding, a fantasy fueled by his daughter's longing and her own naivete. The next day at the airport, she avoided the usual area where the black SUV waited. She ignored Lily's eager wave from the window, pretended not to see. And then she stopped showing up. 3 days passed, and on the fourth, JT entered the pediatrician's office with long, worried strides. Lily had changed, withdrawn, quiet. She didn't want to eat, didn't want to play. She sat in the corner of her room, hugging her stuffed bunny, staring at the wall like she was waiting for something. Or someone. The doctor didn't sugarcoat it. She's suffering a form of emotional rejection. Something has shaken her sense of emotional safety. But I'm here for her. I take care of her. I do everything she needs. JT replied, his voice faltering for the first time. Physical presence isn't the same as emotional connection. Sometimes, a child decides where she feels safe, and when she loses that, something inside her breaks. He closed his eyes, swallowing hard. The face that was always so controlled showed the first cracks, and then, for the first time in a long while, JT felt fear. Not of losing money, not of losing control, but of losing the only person who still tethered him to life. 2 hours later, Claire stood behind the cafe counter, hands trembling as she made coffee. Her eyes were distant. Ever since she had decided to walk away, she carried an uncomfortable emptiness, as if she had left something unresolved. Part of her believed it was the right thing. Another part whispered that she had abandoned someone. Who trusted her? The cafe's automatic door opened. She heard the footsteps before she saw them. And when she looked up, there he was, standing before her. Dark suit, but no tie. Hair tousled by the wind. Eyes marked with exhaustion. "You disappeared," he said. Straight to the point. Claire squared her shoulders, trying to keep her tone steady. It was the right thing to do. Right for who? She bit her lip, looked away. "I found out who you are, and the kind of world you live in. I don't belong in it. And Lily belongs in yours?" Claire hesitated. The words hit harder than she expected. He stepped closer. Voice lower now, heavy with something that sounded like restrained desperation. "She's not well. She won't talk. Won't play. You came into her life unexpectedly, and now you left. Like she didn't matter." Claire's chest tightened. His words stung, but they also exposed her. "I didn't want to hurt her. I just thought it would be better this way." "For who?" he repeated, voice nearly cracking now. She had no answer. "I didn't come here as a CEO or someone powerful. I came as a father, and as someone who doesn't know what else to do." Claire took a deep breath, a knot forming in her throat. The weight of her own insecurities collided with the fear of being yet another fragile link in that little girl's life. "I just didn't want to get too involved. Didn't want to promise something I couldn't keep." "Then don't promise anything. Just show up." She looked at him for a few seconds. He seemed smaller now, human, almost vulnerable. "Okay, but this time it has to be different." Without another word, she took off her apron, laid it on the counter, and walked with him toward the car. In the back seat, Lily's face lit up with a fragile smile the moment she saw her. "I knew you didn't forget me." Claire gently took her hand. "And I knew you'd smile like that again." JT watched through the rearview mirror. And in that moment, he knew he had just lost control of his own life. But maybe that was exactly what would save him. The sound of the SUV's engine faded into the distance as Claire closed the cafe door behind her. She could still feel Lily's small hand wrapped in hers, as if the child's tenderness had been imprinted on her skin. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the heartbeat that was louder than it should have been. That night, sleep came late. While her mother coughed in the next room and the fridge hummed in the silence of their modest home, Claire replayed every word JT had said, every restrained look, every gesture that slipped past the control of a man used to commanding boardrooms, yet now stood powerless in the face of his daughter's fragility. The next morning, a message arrived early on her phone. Short, direct, unsigned. But she recognized the style. "We need to talk. Not about me, about her." The meeting took place in a quiet downtown cafe, far from the spotlight and formal setting Claire had expected. JT was already there, seated in a corner booth, wearing a gray blazer over an open collar shirt. His beard was unshaven, his eyes tired. She approached with steady steps. She didn't want to feel small. She didn't want to lose herself inside his world. "Good morning," she said, sitting down across from him. "Thank you for coming," he replied, sliding a glass of water toward her. "I've thought a lot about what you said, about not making promises, and you're right, but Lily..." He paused, searching for the right words. "Lily needs you, and I don't know how to keep pretending I know what I'm doing." Claire studied him for a few seconds. The silence between them said more than explanations could. Finally, she tilted her head slightly. "So what exactly are you proposing?" JT exhaled, the kind of breath one takes when stepping down from a place they never expected to. "I want to hire you, officially, to spend part of the day with Lily, not as a nurse, not as a nanny, as someone she trusts, as ... Claire." She frowned, not sure if she should laugh or protest. "You want me to become a paid piece of affection?" "No," he said quickly. "I want you to be exactly who you already are. only this time paid for it, with dignity, with respect. Claire lowered her eyes, thoughtful. The offer sounded surreal, but the bills in the kitchen drawer weren't. The overdue tuition for her nursing course wasn't, and her mother's worsening cough that hurt more than any pride. "And how long are you thinking?" she asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. "Until she smiles on her own again," he answered without hesitation. The words disarmed her for a moment, but she composed herself. "There are a few conditions." "Go ahead. I'm not some luxury employee, not a convenient distraction. And most importantly, don't confuse kindness with submission." JT leaned forward slightly. For the first time, his eyes weren't cold, but focused, curious, almost fascinated. "Do you always talk to people like that?" "Only to those who think they can buy me." He pulled back, struck cleanly. But instead of reacting with irritation, as he likely would in any other setting, he gave a faint smile. "Then we have a deal, Claire Reynolds?" She extended her hand firm. "We do. But only until she smiles on her own." When she stood to leave, he walked her to the door. He didn't try to touch her, didn't get too close. But as she walked away down the busy sidewalk, he murmured, only to himself, "Or maybe, until I learn to smile again too." That night Claire came home with a grocery bag in one hand and the promise of a chance in the other. It wasn't just a job. It was the beginning of something she couldn't yet name, but that was already changing the air. Around her and high above the city, in the dark office with glass walls, JT stared at his phone, looking at an old photo of Lily smiling with her mother. And for the first time in years, he felt like something new could grow. JT's home sat in the elevated outskirts of Denver, where electronic gates opened to a sleek, modern mansion surrounded by glass and silence. The interior was elegant, meticulously arranged, and cold. As if no one had truly lived there since his wife was gone, Claire noticed it within the first few days. The absence of laughter, a kitchen no one cooked in, a perfectly manicured garden without colorful flowers, just land controlled by gardeners. Not by hands that knew the feel of earth. She arrived every morning at 9, with a simple bag over her shoulder and an old notebook in her hands. Lily waited for her at the top of the stairs each day, hugging her stuffed bunny and eyes gleaming with excitement. "You're here, my fairy," she'd say with the sincerity of someone who believed in magic. Claire always smiled and replied, "The same way, and you are my light." The routine formed naturally. Drawing, story time, walks to the private park, small household tasks. Claire baked cupcakes with Lily, taught her new letters, listened to innocent confessions only sensitive children carry in their hearts. But what Claire didn't expect was to start feeling something in that house, something that defied logic. That something had a name, and gray-green eyes. JT spent most of his time upstairs in endless meetings and calls. But now and then, he would appear in the kitchen, coincidentally, at the same time Claire and Lily were there. Sometimes he said it was chance. Sometimes he didn't explain at all. On a colder afternoon, Claire sat by the fireplace with Lily reading aloud from a children's book. The girl fell asleep in her lap. Claire stayed still, gently running her fingers through Lily's hair. When she looked up, JT was standing at the door. He said nothing. "Just watch." She whispered. "You should spend more time with her. A father's presence isn't just about providing, it's about listening." He stepped in slowly, sitting across the room. "And what if I don't know how to listen? You learn. Just like she learned to trust me. One gesture at a time." He looked down at the floor for a few seconds, then up at her. His face had softened. "You speak like someone who's lived it." "Because I have. My father left when I was 5, and my mom tried to be everything alone. A heavy silence hung between them. Not uncomfortable, just too intimate. In the days that followed, the casual encounters became inevitable. They had lunch together sometimes. With Lily between them, JT began noticing things about Claire that disarmed him. The way she tied her hair when nervous, how she adjusted Lily's coat before leaving, how she held back words to avoid hurting. And Claire, in turn, noticed the cracks in his armor, the loneliness in his voice, the way he looked at a blank frame in the hallway where a photo of his wife must have once been. One night, after her shift ended, Claire was grabbing her bag when Lily ran to her with a drawing in hand. "It's you," she said, pointing to a figure with colorful wings. "My fairy who came when I needed her most." Claire knelt to receive the paper, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Lily." JT, watching from a distance, felt something stir in his chest, something he didn't understand, but no longer wanted to contain. Later that evening, they crossed paths in the hallway as she was leaving. There was an extra second of silence, a second where their eyes lingered too long. Something almost got said, almost happened, but didn't. "Good night, Mr. Whitmore," Claire said, taking a small step back. "Good night, Claire," he replied, voice lower than usual. She turned and left, but he stayed there, staring at the closed door, unable to shake one thought. If this keeps going, I'm going to fall for her. And he knew that would be a problem. For him, for her, for everything yet to come. Claire hesitated in front of the entryway mirror, smoothing the simple navy blue dress she wore. It was the nicest one she owned, bought 2 years ago for a job interview. No sparkle, no plunging neckline, no high heels. Just a modest, clean, well-pressed dress with a straight cut. Lily watched her from the staircase, dressed in a delicate white lace dress and glittery ballet flats. Her light eyes sparkled with anticipation. "You're coming with me, right?" she asked, nervously fidgeting with her dress. Claire took a deep breath and smiled. "If you want me by your side, I'll be there." The invitation to the Charity Foundation Gala had been sent directly to JT, as always. A glamorous evening, surrounded by Denver's most influential names, held in the luxurious Grand Harmony Hotel ballroom. JT hadn't planned on bringing Lily, but his daughter insisted. She wanted Claire to come too. Insisted so much that, reluctantly, he gave in. "It's just one night," he said while adjusting his tie. "Stay close to her, smile, and then we go home." Claire nodded. She was there for Lily, just for her. But the moment they stepped into the main ballroom, Claire felt the weight of not belonging. The crystal chandeliers reflected too much light. The smiles were too polished. The glances, sharp as razors. JT was immediately surrounded by investors, board members, socialites, all with champagne flutes in hand and rehearsed phrases on their lips. Lily stayed with Claire near the buffet, marveling at the floral arrangements and golden trays. That's when a tall woman approached, wearing a form-fitting red dress and stilettos. Her blonde hair was flawlessly styled, makeup applied with surgical precision. She was flanked by 2 other women who looked straight off magazine covers. "Claire, right?" she said, with a smile that was both sweet and venomous. Claire nodded politely. "I'm Miranda. I was with JT for almost 2 years. A much more sophisticated time in his life." The others chuckled softly. Claire held her posture. "Pleasure." Miranda gave her a once-over, the kind of look people give second-hand furniture they're considering donating. "That dress is very humble, but it's great he brought you. It's always good to show society that even staff can attend, right? Makes the event feel more human." The word staff sliced like a knife. The smirks that followed made it clear. This wasn't just shade. It was public humiliation. Claire took a slow breath, trying to smile. But her eyes were already beginning to well up. Lily tugged on her hand. "Can we go?" she whispered, sensing something wasn't right. Before Claire could answer, another voice came from behind. The same voice that was usually calm, firm, precise, but this time said nothing. JT was there. He had seen everything, but he didn't say a word. He just stood still, his eyes as cold as glass. Maybe out of convenience. Maybe out of cowardice. Claire understood. She bent down gently to pick up Lily's purse. "Let's go, sweetheart. It's late." But the girl tried to protest, her eyes filling with tears. I'll explain at home." And she left, head high. She walked through the laughter, the stares, the expensive dresses. She didn't let a single tear fall, not until she passed through the revolving doors. In the car, Lily wept quietly, hugging her stuffed bunny. "They were mean to you, and Daddy didn't do anything." Claire stroked the girl's hair with a trembling hand, trying to contain her own pain. Sometimes the ones who hurt us most are the ones we most want to trust. In the days that followed, Claire didn't return to the mansion. She didn't reply to messages, didn't answer calls. Lily refused to eat, slept poorly, called for Claire in her dreams, clinging to the drawing of the fairy with blue wings, and JT stared at his own reflection in the glass of his office, remembering the exact moment he chose silence and what he lost because of it. But the pain he felt now was still small compared to the emptiness that was coming. The soft rain that morning seemed to carry with it the weight of the previous days. Claire walked down the wet sidewalk with measured steps, a white envelope held tightly between her cold fingers. The wind swept through the trees lining the upscale neighborhood, gently rustling the blooming branches in front of JT's mansion. She wasn't wearing a uniform, just dark jeans, a simple cream blouse, and her hair tied back with a pale scarf. Her eyes held steady resolve, but also a deep sadness. This wasn't just a visit. It was an ending. The housekeeper opened the gate and led her to JT's office, where he was reviewing reports on his laptop as if the world around him still ran on numbers. When he looked up and saw her, he froze for a moment. "Claire?" His voice came out cautious, almost surprised. She didn't answer right away. She simply held out the envelope to him, her fingers trembling slightly. "Read it," she said softly. JT took the envelope carefully. He opened it and read in silence. The letter was direct. No embellishments. A resignation, written with clarity and dignity. When he finished, he lowered the paper slowly. "Is this a joke?" "No," Claire replied. "It's the only choice I can make." He stood abruptly, his chair sliding slightly across the polished wood floor. He came around the desk, a frown creasing his forehead. "You want to leave because of some misunderstanding at a party? Petty comments?" Claire crossed her arms, her voice steady. "It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was humiliation. And you were there, in silence. It was a delicate setting. You said nothing, JT, nothing. I was treated like an intruder, like garbage, and you pretended not to see." He ran a hand through his hair, visibly frustrated. His expression was a mixture of disbelief and fear. "Claire, I don't know how to handle this world, these emotions, that kind of situation." She cut in, her eyes glistening. "But you know how to stay silent when it matters most, and that says everything." A heavy silence fell. He lowered his gaze for a moment, then stepped closer. "And Lily? Are you just going to leave her?" Claire faltered. Hearing Lily's name hurt like a hot blade. But she held firm. She has a father. Rich, powerful, influential. A man who's learned to buy affection, but not to build it. She grow up, and one day she understand what you did. He took a deep breath, trying to contain the visible crack in his composure. Then he murmured, almost broken, "Why? Are you being so hard on me?" Claire swallowed hard. "Because you're used to people lowering their heads. People who take the crumbs of your attention and say thank you. But I'm not your emotional employee. I'm not your charity case. And I won't be another convenient silence in your life of appearances." JT didn't know what to say. For the first time, his commanding presence seemed to collapse under the weight of his own loneliness. She walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back one last time. "If one day you learn how to apologize with your heart, not with your logic, maybe we can talk again. But for now, I need to step away to remember who I am." And then she left. JT remained in the middle of the office, the envelope still in his hands. The silence in the room seemed deafening. He walked to the window and looked out onto the empty street. All he saw was her shadow disappearing at the end of the sidewalk. As raindrops began to stream down the glass, the entire mansion now echoed with the absence of Claire's gentle voice. And the sound of Lily's laughter beside her was gone too. And only then did JT finally understand. He hadn't lost a nanny. He had lost the last real connection he had to the world. The sky over Denver was dull and gray that morning, and the air felt heavier than usual. A cold breeze hinted at rain, but Lily insisted on going to school without her coat. The housekeeper tried to convince her otherwise, but the girl refused with a distant look, her tiny shoulders already carrying more than any 6-year-old should. Since Claire's departure, Lily had fallen silent for long stretches. She refused snacks. She didn't laugh, didn't ask for stories. She spent her nights hugging her stuffed bunny, eyes wide open in the dark. That morning, during recess, the teacher noticed her absence. The search began in the yard, then the bathrooms. Nothing. Panic spread through the school. Within minutes, the office was dialing the emergency contact, J.T. Whitmore. Meanwhile, across town, Claire walked down a downtown sidewalk, lost in thought. She was returning from an interview for an internship at a public hospital. The pay was symbolic, but her heart wasn't in it, and she knew it. Every street corner, every park, every lilac bloom reminded her of Lily. That's when she heard the shouting, "Lily, wait, stop!" A group of adults was running in panic along the sidewalk. Claire turned instinctively. And then she saw. The scene played out in slow motion. Lily was running across the street, her backpack open, papers flying. Behind her, cars were approaching. A horn blared. The wet asphalt shimmered like glass under the weak light. Claire didn't think. She dropped her bag and ran. She screamed the girl's name with everything she had. "Lily!" The little girl turned, confused. And just as a car sped around the corner, Claire threw herself forward. She grabbed Lily by the shoulders and yanked her back onto the sidewalk just seconds before impact. The car screeched too late, slamming into a post. People screamed. Claire dropped to her knees, Lily clinging to her, trembling. "Are you okay?" she asked, breathless, holding the girl's face in her hands. I just wanted to see you." "You disappeared?" Lily murmured, her eyes brimming with tears. Claire hugged her tightly, their hearts beating. In unison. At the hospital, the white walls felt colder than usual. JT arrived in a panic, suit wrinkled, tie loose, eyes wild with fear. He burst into the room where his daughter was being examined, and upon seeing her on the exam table, rushed to her side. "My God, Lily!" She hugged him tightly, but her eyes remained on Claire, who stood nearby, still in her coat. The doctor entered moments later with a clipboard in hand. Thankfully, no injuries. "But there's something you need to hear." JT nodded, tense. "Lily is showing clear signs of severe childhood anxiety. The running away, the apathy, the obsessive behavior, this isn't normal. She's trying to cope with grief that was never addressed. JT's brow furrowed, confused. Grief? She lost her mother, didn't she? But there was no space to process it. No conversation, no emotional support. And now, Claire has become her emotional anchor. When that anchor was pulled away, the collapse followed. Claire lowered her eyes. JT remained silent for a long moment. The doctor concluded, she needs urgent psychological support and emotional stability. With all due respect, Mr. Whitmore, this goes beyond money. When the doctor left, JT moved toward his daughter, knelt before the exam table, and took her hand. I'm sorry, Lily. I didn't see it. I thought I was doing the right thing. The girl said nothing. She just rested her head on his shoulder in silence. Claire watched from afar. She wanted to leave. She didn't want to feel what she felt. But something kept her rooted to the spot. JT stood slowly and walked toward her. His eyes, for the first time, were red. His voice came out low, broken, like a man undone. She could have died today. Claire nodded, eyes wet, but she didn't. He swallowed hard. What came next was a whisper, a confession buried for years. Since my wife died, I never cried. Today was the first time. Claire looked at him quietly. His pride was beginning to crumble, but it was still early. Pain had its work to do. She simply replied, then maybe now. You're starting to actually feel. And she turned to leave, walking away as JT stood frozen between the sterile hospital walls and the weight of a guilt that had finally become real. The clock read 9:14 p.m. when Claire heard the soft sound of an engine parking outside the house. She sat on the worn couch in the small living room, a now cold cup of tea in her hands and a blanket draped over her legs. The warm light of the lamp cast gentle shadows on the walls, where old photographs told quiet stories of a life built on quiet battles. She rose slowly, her bare feet brushing the creaky wooden floor. Walking to the window, she carefully pulled back the curtain and saw the dark SUV parked in front of her makeshift garden. No luxury flowers there, just reused plastic pots, dry soil, and daisies that insisted on blooming with the bare minimum. Car door opened, and he stepped out. JT Whitmore. Alone, no driver, no bodyguards, no immaculate suit. He wore dark jeans, a rolled-up gray shirt, and on his face, the weight of someone who had finally accepted that he needed to ask, not. Command. Claire stood still for a moment. Her heart pounded faster. Thoughts collided. Part of her wanted to lock the door and pretend she hadn't seen. But another part, the more stubborn one, already knew this wasn't about him. It was about her. About not running from what deserved to be faced. The knock was soft, no urgency, just presence. A silent request. She opened the door. The warm glow of the living room lit his face, revealing dark circles, wind-blown hair, and eyes that, for the first time since they met, looked exposed. You came, she said, without breaking eye contact. I needed to. No flowers, no prewritten apologies. No shields, he answered, voice deeper than usual. Just me this time. She stepped aside and gave a slight nod. He walked in, glancing around as if stepping into a sanctuary. The house was small, but alive. There was the scent of coffee, the sound of a pot simmering in the kitchen, and a crochet blanket folded neatly on the armchair. JT stood in the middle of the room, taking it all in quietly. This was the opposite of his world. And yet, there was more truth here than in any of the banquets he'd attended. My mom's asleep, Claire said, breaking the silence. She had a hard day, I can imagine. And I still don't know why you're here. He lifted his gaze, steady, but without arrogance. Inside them swirled fear, guilt, the hope of redemption. I'm here because I don't know how to keep pretending I'm whole. Claire watched him, saying nothing. He exhaled and reached into his pocket. He unfolded a piece of paper, a child's drawing, a woman with blue wings holding the hand of a blonde little girl, Lily. She still sleeps with this beside her bed. Called your name 3 nights in a row, and tonight, she asked me why. Fairies always leave. Claire bit her lip. The pain of hearing that struck deeper than she'd expected. Still, she didn't look away. I never meant to hurt her, or to walk away, but I had to protect myself from an environment that treated me like I was invisible. And I let that happen, he admitted, his face tightening. I froze, like I always do when I'm afraid. Claire stepped closer. Her eyes were tear-filled, but unwavering. You feel fear, JT? Every day. Since I buried the woman I thought I'd grow old with. Since I saw my daughter stop smiling. Since I realized no amount of money could buy what you gave her freely. She closed her eyes for a moment. A silent tear escaped. And what do you want from me now? He breathed deeply. Didn't step closer. Didn't try to touch her. He knew it wasn't the moment to invade. I want to tell you the truth. Not the polished version. The real one. Claire sat on the couch without a word. He sat across from her like a man facing an invisible court. When my wife died, I stopped feeling. I shut the door to my heart, my home, my memories. I turned pain into control. Became a machine, meetings, calendars, silence. And I thought I was protecting Lily and myself. He looked down at his hands, then back at her. Then you showed up. With your honesty, your presence, you asked for nothing. Expected nothing. You just gave. You gave affection, time, peace. And I hit again. Claire took deep breaths, trying not to shatter. If you want to walk away again, I'll understand. I deserve it. But if there's still a place for me in your life, even a small one, even in silence, I promise I'll learn to earn it. The words lingered in the air, suspended. Claire lowered her head, her hair falling across her face. When she looked up again, there was new vulnerability and the faintest thread of hope. You know what the worst part is? What? I never wanted to be part of your life. I just wanted to protect a little girl. I just wanted to be useful. But in the end, I was the one who got the most attached. He didn't answer, just nodded with his eyes. I still have open wounds, JT, and so do you. If we're going to try, it has to be slow. One step at a time. No promises, no hiding. I accept every step, every silence. Every new beginning. She hesitated. Then, with a simple gesture, she nodded toward the kitchen. Then start with the coffee. He stood slowly, walked to the sink, poured 2 cups. When he returned, he handed her one, his hand slightly trembling. They sat on the couch, saying nothing, 2 broken souls, holding warm cups, and maybe beginning to heal. Outside, the rain began to fall harder. But inside that house, for the first time, there was shelter. The following week, the sky's over. Denver finally cleared after days of rain. There was something different in the air, as if even the weather sensed that something had been restored to balance. Claire stood by the kitchen window, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, thinking about the steps that had brought her there. The conversation with JT echoed within her like a wave, coming and going, not to hurt this time, but to heal. She knew there were still wounds. But she also knew she no longer wanted to live running. The love she had begun to feel couldn't be rooted in dependence, guilt, or silence. It had to be born of respect, grow in truth, and be sustained with freedom. If she was going back, it would have to be as a whole woman, not as someone's shadow. That morning, JT waited outside her house. sitting on the hood of his car, a wool coat folded over his knees, his hands visibly anxious. When she opened the gate, he stood up immediately. "Ready?" he asked, not sure what answer he hoped for. Claire walked toward him with steady, calm steps. She stopped just inches from him and met his gaze. "I'm coming back," she sighed, but not as a nanny, not as an employee, not as someone who accepts the bare minimum out of fear of losing everything. He nodded, his eyes locked on hers. "I want you as you are, with your ideas, your boundaries, and with the freedom to leave whenever you choose, even if I'll be hoping you stay." Claire took a deep breath. This was new for her, for both of them. A man used to giving orders, now learning to listen. And a woman who had always been seen as support, now being chosen fully. "If you really want to walk beside me," she said, "it has to be side by side. No looking back. No looking down." "Then let's go slow," he replied with a half smile. "But let's go together." The weeks that followed were about rebuilding. Claire began visiting the house again, but at different hours. JT created a space just for her in the garden where she planted real flowers, not decorative ones. That spot became a symbol of new beginnings. Lily started seeing a child therapist, one Claire had helped choose. The change was noticeable within days. The little girl went back to drawing, went back to laughing. One day, after a session, she pointed at a blooming tree and said, "It looks like Claire. It stays beautiful even when the weather's bad." Jade heard her, his eyes wet. Then he looked at Claire and whispered, "You gave my daughter back to me." Claire smiled gently. She was always there. She just needed to be heard. By the end of that month, a new foundation was announced in the local papers, Progetto Ricamicar, a program focused on emotional support for single mothers, grieving children, and vulnerable families. The main sponsor was the Whitmore Foundation, under JT's name, but no one knew the idea was born in a small room, filled with the scent of fresh coffee and the sound of broken voices learning how to rebuild. In one interview about the project, when asked why he supported that cause, JT answered simply, "Sometimes someone you never expected changes your life and teaches you that true strength is in listening." Months later, Claire strolled through the park with Lily. The girl rode her bike, more confident, now lighter. The wind played in her hair while Claire, seated on a bench, wrote in a blue-covered notebook. JT approached from behind, hands in his pockets, watching them quietly. He sat beside the woman who, without fanfare, had changed everything. "What are you writing about?" Claire closed the notebook and looked at him with peace in her eyes. "About what we learn when we stop running." He smiled. "And what did you learn?" She turned to the open sky. "That sometimes we think we're saving a child, but in the end, it's us who end up being saved." At that moment, the imaginary camera would slowly pull back like in a good romantic drama, but with its feet planted in reality. No eternal promises, just a true beginning. And in that story of unlikely encounters, what remained wasn't just love. It was the certainty that when someone chooses to love without losing themselves, that's when love is truly worth it. So, what did you think of this story? Did it move your heart in some way? Leave your score from 0 to 10 in the comments. I'd really love to know how deeply this story touched you. If you liked it, give it a like, share it with someone who loves intense stories like this one. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more tales of love, healing, and second chances. And before you go, I've picked out another powerful story that just might touch you even deeper. Just click and let your heart feel.